today we are at the Kent Farm for Utah Cyclocross.
This was a fun course.
It was a true Belgian cyclocross course.
That's what they called it, and I think I agree 100%.
There was mud, there was grass, there were run-ups, there were single track, rivers, logs to run across.
Anything you could ever want in a cross race, and this had it.
About the only thing it didn't have was sand, but in their defense, there isn't always sand
available.
And there's not always sand in every course.
Yep.
So
yep.
This part was deceivingly tough. Like, it was bumpy.
It was bumpy, and I think the mountain bikes, you can see both of the mountain.
Look at how they're just
cruising through this, smooth as butter.
And then if you look at your rear camera, it's like this is how you can tell how bumpy it was. It's just jiggling all over the place.
Yeah.
That was your rear end.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
Mm-hmm. Pretty much. So Ty got a great start here and pretty much was leading out the entire group for the first lap. And I mean, I don't know if you were doing it on purpose, but you did a really good job of powering on through sections like this, but then closing things off during, the tighter sections where someone might be able to pass you. I feel like you picked really good lines that allowed you to stay in front and rest when you wanted to. Yeah,
we say rest. I mean, you're still going all out, but it's just like the mental rest you get from knowing, okay, I'm taking the line I want to take.
Yeah.
I mean, even you kind of saw yourself do it there for a second where you just backed off the wheel just a hair to allow you to take a slightly better corner. And now you were able to pass all three of those people on the run-up, or four of those people, on the run-up. So you're sitting in fourth place right now behind Connor, Steven, and myself.
Right.
And you've got Joe, Matt, Evan, and Adam behind you, I think. And and Gavin, and a couple others who I don't remember their name right now. And you got a really good power up that hill there and close that gap to Connor. And now this is kind of the fun part. This off-camber section got muddier every single lap.
Yeah. The first few laps you could take the low line through it and not have to worry, but as the race progressed, you kind of had to move up to that high line and anticipate that you'd slide down. And that little puddle we went through, honestly, was one of those things that no one quite knew what we were going to do, I think, until we actually got to the race, and then we all just had to plow through it. It's one of those things where you're like, well...
It was deep enough that you didn't want to run it, and you didn't want to ride it, but you also didn't want to take the time to cross the little log bridge that they had up there, because you would definitely lose a lot of time. So I don't think hardly anybody rode it in the pre-ride until you just went straight through it during the race and hoped that it wasn't as deep as it looked.
And hope that you take it at the right speed and don't go over your handlebars.
Yeah, it was muddy on the bottom.
Yeah.
And a few people did go over their handlebars. Fortunately, not in our group, I don't think.
Yeah.
At least not that we saw.
Yeah.
But in the later waves, there were some people that went over their handlebars.
Yeah. Now, I'm guessing you attacked here because it's a fast section. Does that sound about right, Ty?
Yeah, so my strength is fast and flat, and so I turned up the speed a little bit here to play to that advantage. And it does string out the group quite a bit. Joe gets by you, and Steven is still up there next to me, and Connor's able to just stay ahead of you. But then right up coming behind you is Gavin and Evan, and Matt's a little bit further back behind them still.
Yeah.
But Gavin's starting to mount an attack on you. You can see him charging up the hill.
Yeah, well, and for me at this point, because I'm trying to keep up with you, my heart rate's pegged. I'm at about 198 when we're going through this section. So when I do get passed by Gavin here in a second, it's because, I mean, how much harder can you go, right?
You can only go so hard.
It's cross. So this is, it's classic. And you just kept putting on the gas through here, and I think you made a few people really, really burn some matches. And I wasn't really in the group of people who was going to kill myself on the first lap, so I just kind of settled in and went at my pace.
And you doing that allowed Gavin here to get by you, but you take a better exit and then put in the extra energy to get back past Gavin, because we're about to turn around this tree and go into the single track. And once you're in the single track, it's pretty difficult to pass.
Yeah, pretty much everyone stayed in the same position through the entire single track section. And it was mostly just try not to make a mistake and stick with the people that are in front of you. Of course, you were in front through this whole section, and you kind of got to choose your line and how hard you went and how, where you could put in the efforts.
Yeah, and you can see just in the front camera there, that gap that the three of us, Joe, Steven, and myself had, has already decreased. Connor's right up on our tail now. You're right on Connor's tail. So I was definitely slower through this section, which is one of the reasons I also wanted to try to get there in the front.
Right, which honestly I think played to your advantage. I mean, you didn't need to be gassing on through here. You had put in a big effort just before this, so it was really good strategy on your part to just, you knew we were right there. You knew that we weren't going to be able to pass you, so why put in really hard efforts in places where there's no advantage to it, right?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was thinking. I was tired and I saw that nobody could pass here, so I took the pace down just a little bit, knowing that you would catch up to me, but knowing that you were still going to have to go hard enough to catch up.
Right. Now, I don't know if you meant to come off the bike here, but if you did, it was brilliant because everyone behind you, I mean, I got stuck behind Connor got stuck behind Joe. It was just this domino effect of this chain reaction to Tyler got off the bike, and I'm pretty sure this is where I lost the race to you.
Yeah, it wasn't on purpose. There's a big root there with maybe 6 inches of space to make it through that line without it coming off your bike. But if you hit that root, it was a muddy enough section that you would just lose all traction and not be able to keep pedaling. So it wasn't on purpose, but fortunately it was the first lap, so everybody had the same penalty. Essentially, everyone had to get off.
But if it had been, it would have been brilliant. That's what I'm saying.
I mean, maybe, but I still had to get off my bike too.
Right.
So it only would have been brilliant if somehow everybody had to get off except for me, which didn't happen.
Yeah. Now, this little section was kind of fun. This was another decision point where you could go to the right, and you'll see that most people actually did that. And I just got off my bike and ran straight through the water because I was already soaking and just kept running.
And that allowed you to get past Evan, so that was a good move for you. I, on the other hand, went over the log every single time.
Which gave you a benefit. I mean,
it was
never
nice.
had muddy cleats going
I didn't have muddy cleats, and that was nice. In hindsight, was the river faster? I think probably a little bit faster, but it did allow me to run. So if you ran the log, it gave you a little bit better exit into the next corner. So I don't know in the end which one was faster. Probably the river a little bit, but I was happy to keep my feet dry.
Yeah. And I'm totally pegged here, so this is where, a couple people passed me through this section, and I'm just kind of watching the race go, and this is just where strength, being in shape, really, really pays off. That high VO2 max, being able to go, supra threshold and just keep the gas on really helps you.
Yeah, both Matt and Connor, who were ahead of you there, have been in the top 3 pretty much every single race. But here you can see that you've actually passed Connor. So, I mean, technically he might be stronger than you, but here you've played your cards better and now you're passing him. And I don't think he ever comes back for the rest of the race.
I don't think he did. However, the thing that I'll say, and you kind of saw it in that section right there, is that there are places where mountain bikes pay off, and really you could see he had to pick up that 20-30 pound mountain bike, lift it over the things, and then get back on it, where I'm off my bike and barely losing any momentum at all. So, mountain bikes smooth through the bumpy sections, but heavy when you have to pull it over something. So
yep, exactly.
What's actually faster? I don't know.
Exactly. So we're going to fast forward here to me, and I make a couple mistakes this lap. Right there, I was distracted by this rider that had come off on that tricky section we talked about earlier, and that threw off my concentration just enough that I had to get off my bike there again, so I lost some time there. And then I make another mistake on this lap where, similar situation, where I see the rider up there kind of in the line I want to take, and then he switches sides of the road, so I switch back to this side, and then I just lose it in the mud. My rear tire just spins out, so I have to jump off and run up the hill, which isn't great because now Joe and Steven, who have been basically right on my tail, are literally right on my tail now, like just a couple feet behind me. So now I have the added pressure of having them right there as I'm coming down through this I'm gonna call it a lake because it was so much
It was
water.
a pond. It was basically a pond. Yeah. Now, it's funny because that section in the first lap was easy.
It was
Go through
really
the bog,
easy.
you hit that hill, and it's nothing. By the time you got to the third lap, I think everyone was spinning out going up that.
It got really muddy there.
Yeah, so it was one of those sections where I don't think I ever changed my line, but in hindsight, I think if I had, I would have done better.
I should have changed my line. It's just like after the third or fourth lap, you're used to taking the exact same line every time.
Right.
And so that's what you do.
Mm-hmm.
And so here again, I take a very similar line, and you can watch Joe on his mountain bike coming up quickly behind me. He's just able to float over this section here, which was pretty bumpy and muddy, and just gets a good exit there. So fortunately, I didn't have to jump off my bike, but I still wasn't as fast as Joe over that section, and he starts to open up a gap here. Especially on this section again where I took a bad line, and now he's got, I don't know, what would you say, 50 feet?
Yep, and he's just gas on. He's ready to go. So looks like he was probably biding his time, looking for just the right time. And as soon as he got by you, he knew he was gonna. It was part of his strategy.
Yep.
He was gonna lay down the power.
I made a mistake, and he smelled the blood, and he put in a big attack. And then I spent this next third of a lap trying to pull him back.
Which is really hard when you have to pull someone back like that. If you've made a mistake in the race, you gotta really focus to do that.
Yeah. So you can see there Joe moves over to try to cover me off, and I just switched around on the other side. And then he moves over again, but left me enough room that time. And just in the very bottom corner here, you can see his wheel poking out. So we're just side by side, kind of drag racing through this section. And then fortunately I chose the inside line here, so I'm just going to get the better angle essentially for this section, and Joe has to drop in behind me as we go around this corner.
That's racing, right? I mean, you see a lot of things right there that Joe had the front line and blocked you from getting around, which he did beautifully, and you counterattacked by going around the left. Now, in an ideal world, we don't have someone that we're lapping in the course, but that's just racing, right?
Yep, he covered me off, and then he stayed on that line, and I went on the inside, and it turned out better for me in the end.
And you did it again right there.
Yep, so I put in a good dig here because I knew I wanted to be in front for the single track, because again, the mountain bike is faster through the single track, but it's really difficult to pass. So I think Joe maybe spent a little bit too much energy trying to get past me just a second ago, that he wasn't able to respond on that climb. But here, I go across the wood again, and you can see Joe's tire pop up, but me not going through that lake, I'm going to say, means I don't have mud in my cleats, and I was able to clip in almost immediately.
Right. Well, I mean, I think he was almost side by side, so some of that also just boils down to,
I outran him a little bit, I guess.
You clipped in faster. Sometimes it's just the 1 second that it can take to clip in can be the difference.
It can make a difference. So we're coming up to the final straight now, and Joe is right on my tail. And we're coming around to this final U-turn here. So I'm in front still, and right here, Joe runs right into the back of me. So we'll just rewind that really quickly. So you can see
right there.
Right there. The crash is down here in the corner. I feel like I left a lot of space for him. The trajectory he was going at, I don't think he was ever intending to make that corner.
But he whose wheel is in front has the right to take the line.
Right. If he had been side by side with me, we both would have made the corner, but he chose not to do that, and we had an accident, but fortunately I stayed on my bike.
And cheers to safe riding and a good race.
Yeah, we'll be back next week. Lots of sand in the future.
Oh yeah.